Welcome to CES 2021. My name is Josh Campbell. I'm the CEO of Clara Media. Obviously, we're all sitting here. The pandemic has accelerated a lot over the past year, specifically digital transformation. And business that's relied on personal interaction has had to really adapt. As much of the population is working, eating, and exercising at home, companies that provide products and services in the health and wellness space have been hugely impacted. So I'm excited today to be discussing the digital transformation of personal wellness. And with us today, we have Mindy Grossman, who's the CEO of WW, formerly Weight Watchers, where she's been for the past 3 years. Prior to WW, she served as CEO of HSNI and held executive positions at Nike and Ralph Lauren. Mindy, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Great to be here, Josh.
So for those, in the audience not familiar with WW, why don't you give us a sense of what the business was pre-pandemic?
Sure. As you mentioned, I joined the company 3 years ago to help lead our transformation from the leader in global healthy weight loss built on community to truly build an entire ecosystem of wellness to really help people sustain healthy habits long-term and lead their healthiest lives. And so that's the journey that we've been on, to your point, of digital transformation to truly be a technology company with this human-centric overlay. So the investments that we've made in our purpose and brand, so February 2018, we came out with We Inspire Healthy Habits for Real Life for people, families, communities, the world, for everyone, to truly be that brand that democratized wellness and to build that ecosystem. So we came into 2020 with spectacular momentum. We had the launch of My WW, which was our most personalized food program in the history of the company. We embarked on a 9-city arena tour with Oprah on your 2020 vision, how to lead your best life. And we had really been focused on continuing to build out our ecosystem. And, I was telling you earlier, March 7th, I was standing in an arena in Denver for the finale of the tour with 15,000 people. And then the world changed. It changed almost overnight. And what I would say is that did not change our strategy. It actually accelerated our strategy. And you used that word earlier. I know Scott Galloway, calls it an accelerant. And how did you all of a sudden innovate in different ways? So what I would say, it enabled us to accelerate the strategies of being able to use personalization technology to give people a full ecosystem, more important today than ever before. But
Right.
We had to make some seismic shifts within that.
Great. So there's a lot, in there to unpack, and I want to go deeper into some of those areas you mentioned. But I want to start with sort of your statement about becoming a technology company, because I think it's really interesting. Over the past decade, we've seen a lot of industries start to talk about themselves as tech companies, right? If you're a automobile manufacturer, they now say we're a tech company. If you're a payments processor or a credit card company, there's people saying we're a technology company. When you say, becoming a technology company, how do you think about that? What does that mean to you? How does that change the composition of the team that you're building around you? What was that shift that you had to do within the culture to become a technology company?
That's very important, because even prior to joining WW, I had been spending quite some time as chairman of the National Retail Federation, and even in my prior role, talking about the importance of marrying technology plus meaning to help people lead better connected lives. And I think that is critical to brands today. It's not technology for technology's sake. How are you applying technology to human behavior, to purpose, and to be able to provide people with greater connectivity and meaning. And if you look at our brand, this 57-year-old brand that's been transforming lives throughout that entire time, to be able to utilize technology to make that experience more personalized, more meaningful, more community-based, and bringing people together, that's what's really important. And so when we talk about ourselves as a technology experience company, we are immediately saying that it also is in service of human-centric interaction and behavior. And I do think that any brand today, no matter what business you're in, the ability for technology to allow you to create a greater relationship with who you serve, whatever that constituency is just so important.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. We've been talking a lot sort of at Techonomy, which is one of the brands I run at. The companies that are becoming more digital are able to deliver more value to their stakeholders, right? So the more digitally savvy companies can be more stakeholder centric and really understand how to deliver that value.
Yeah, it's about delivering financial, human, and social value at the same time. And I think they're not mutually exclusive. I also think that what technology allows us to do is to utilize data to create intimacy in such different ways than we may have been able to do in the past. It also enables us to be more agile, test and learn, and really determine what are those things that are going to make the greatest impact.
Right. Great. So you mentioned a bunch of interesting sort of things in your first response. So I want to dig in a little deeper. First in the sense of community. You've used the word community a bunch. Obviously, WW has a community of members and people that are highly engaged with you. Have you seen that behavior change from moving to a more in-person, face-to-face interaction pre-pandemic to how is the community engaged differently? Have you seen different behavior? Do you find that people are finding it easier or harder to build that sense of community without face-to-face? Give me a sense of technology's impact on this word and this sense of community.
It's been an incredible experience to kind of watch what has transpired over the past 9 months. So, I said that in March 7th, I was in Denver with 15,000 people. And a week later, less than a week later, we identified that for the health and safety of our employees and our members, we needed not just to shut down our offices, but to pause all our in-person workshops. And just to give you the scope of perspective, we had 30,000 a week in 12 different markets. And because of the investments that we've made over the course of this time in team and technology, we were able to, in 6 days, train 14,000 coaches and guides, and simultaneously in 12 countries, launch all of those workshops virtually. And the reason we were able to do that was the maniacal focus on supporting our members at a time when it was more important than ever. But what's happened because of that, and I think a lot of the things we've had to do for need have now identified big opportunities. So just recently, we added a whole new vertical of digital. So all close to 5 million of our members have all our digital assets in our app across all the areas of wellness. But in addition, that vertical is now going to allow, for example, in the US, 16 hours a day, 7 days a week for people who want that interaction to be there. Now, we do have some physical workshops open, obviously adhering to guidelines, and one-on-one interaction or group interaction will always be part of who we are, but it's going to evolve. But this virtual landscape of workshops now allows us to transcend geography. We can bring people together in very different ways, different cohorts, different coaches. We've hired a whole new cohort of coaches throughout this time to really be able to help support our community. So again, what ended up being a need that we could not do to support our members has now become a whole new asset of support for people.
And that quick, pivot, or that ability to adapt within a week to being able to go online, is that because of the planning that had already been put in place and the infrastructure that you were already building? Or is that literally just put on the team, hey, within a week we have to be doing this? Or what could you attribute part of that to a lot of the work you've been doing over the last year?
Absolutely. It had a lot to do with the work. And it's not just the work, it's the team and the talent and how they were working together. I mean, in today's environment, you really need to create the ability to have people who are empowered, who can be agile, who can work together collaboratively with a purposeful end goal. There's a book by Keith Ferrazzi, Leading Without Authority. It's very, very relevant to today. And that's the kind of organizational structure you need within the digital world to be able to move quickly and to use those investments, those assets, that data, et cetera, to be able to pivot when you have to. And in an environment like today, which is still uncertain, being able to have that kind of agility and to have the teams working together in those kind of ways, it is absolutely critical. And that's the work that certainly we've done over the last number of years. Right.
So it's interesting, if you were to think about your experience at HSNI moving into WW, a lot of companies have now talked to themselves, you've said, we're becoming a technology company, but you're also becoming a media company. You're becoming a content company. What are the learnings that you took from HSN over to WW about now this movement towards content, every brand needing to build more and more content, libraries of content? So to your point, there is the real time, but you're also producing content libraries as well. So was that a big learning that you were able to take from HSN over to WW?
Absolutely. I think running a media company and a digital company for over 10 years, particularly one that created dynamic community with audience because of the power of storytelling content that identified actually a need and communicated that to an audience is really very powerful today. We're all looking for ways to engage, our audiences that are authentic and that are needed in whatever the environment is. And I do think content is so powerful for a number of reasons. One, in today's world, people want truth and they want things that they trust, and they can take that content and utilize it for however they need it. We're in a world of so much conflicting information that I think brands today, that trust factor, and those that have the right to be able to provide content that's going to be in service of people's needs. And actually, last week, we just launched, in addition to our Digital Plus Unlimited workshops, we also launched what's called Digital 360. It's a whole new membership vertical around coach, community, and on-demand content. And, just in the initial stages, we've seen incredible engagement. And that's what people are really looking for today. What tools, what content, what engagement can be part of their lives that is going to enhance what it is they need. And, you and I were talking earlier, just what's happening in the world of, let's call it wellness or health and wellness, what has gone from what might have been perceived as a luxury is now a core necessity. And, with people having such a complete reappraisal of how they live, how they work, how they spend, what they value beyond dollars, right? It's just so important that the more we can provide, the more in service we are.
Great. And to that point, we talked about really access, and you could look at things like telehealth, right? Telehealth has been something that people have been talking about for a decade now. Very few people up until the pandemic had probably engaged, and that's both on the consumer side as well as on the physician side. Many, very few had engaged. When you see that huge growth of telehealth during this time, you are doing similar things with telecoaching, one-on-one coaching. How have you seen that being received on both the consumer side and all of these coaches that you've now trained? What are some of the insights that you've seen during that time? And also comment on how you see that continuing post-pandemic and the role that will play, once face-to-face does come back.
So we're not going to go backwards, right? There really is no going back. I think so many of the learnings are going to shift human behavior in very interesting ways. I think telehealth will become kind of the growth vehicle. People are getting more and more comfortable in a virtual environment. And again, what you said it as well, it is not going to replace the human need for physical interaction. It is going to enhance it. And that's what we're really seeing. One of the benefits of what we do and how we interact with our members is we see human behavior in real time. So if you look at our verticals of wellness, nutrition, activity, mindset, sleep, motivation, community, we can see shifts in behavior. And, it was when the pandemic first happened, there was about a 6-week freeze of behavior, right? What's happening? And then people went back to being very engaged because they wanted some kind of structure within their lives. So we've gone from maybe 5-10 years ago, people thinking that habit was not a great word, to wanting that. They want order, they want structure, they want motivation, and they want inspiration. And the more they can do it in what they consider a safe environment and a convenient environment fueled by technology, that's not going to go away. It's just going to be in addition to what new physical experiences they might want to have. The other thing is, if you look at the coaches that we've been attracting and that we are using for engagement, they all come from different worlds, whether that be nutrition, whether that be fitness, mindset, and behavior, stress management. And so this ability today, because of technology, for people not just to interact with one, but to interact with what they need at any given time. And to me, that's about the on-demand economy, which is just going to continue to just be a critical part of everyone's lives.
Great. So let's talk. You mentioned about behaviors of your community and your members that you're able to see across all these different data points to personalize. So I want to dig in a little deeper into the data and the personalization component. First, talk a little about those data points around nutrition and activity and mindset. And I think you had mentioned on our prep, sleep. Obviously, all of those data points are extremely important as you look at this 360 view of the individual. Talk a little about how you do collect that data in real time, because I think that's important to understand how you understand, ultimately the consumer's, trends and behavior.
We launched My WW Plus on November 16th. And what we were very excited about, it is the first time in the company's history that we had a significant innovation launch that was a non-food program innovation going into 2021 or going into the next year. And what that does is personalize the entire experience. So using AI, machine learning, there is an assessment, both pre-paywall, post-paywall, that people take around their lifestyle, around their needs, and it marries them not only to a food program that's going to be right for them, but an entire suite of how they should be focused in all of the areas of wellness. So what is the physical activity that's right for them around the science of smart points, around strength, resilience, different levels of activity. Sleep tracking has had tremendous engagement. We're doing a lot of work around how we can support stress and mindset. It also enables you to every week kind of give you yourself kind of an update on how you're doing, what you need to focus on. And the beauty of the program is the more you engage, the more personalized that interaction becomes, whether it be what your coach is suggesting or what guidance we're giving you and what motivation. And to a degree, what we all are as human beings, we want to be inspired, we want to be motivated, and there's a certain level of gamification to it. Mindy, great what you accomplished this week. Now, what do you want to accomplish next week? And it becomes my WW. And I think that's what we're all looking for. As people, we interface with a lot of different experiences and we compare them all. And the experiences that are the most personalized, the most seamless, right? And that provide the greatest, satisfaction of our needs are going to be the ones that become most important in our lives.
Great. So a lot, while a lot of the information sounds like is self-reported, right? So the consumer, obviously there's some that you're able to gather, externally. This isn't something we talked about in the prep, so hopefully you're not completely blindsided. But there's been research to show that there are human biases when they give answers to humans versus when they give them to even a robot or a computer terminal or answer mobily. Do you think it removes some of the biases of how people self-report their eating behavior, their activity, whereas when they're talking human to human, they're thinking of how is that person judging them versus I'm filling something out on an app. I'm going to be maybe more truthful. Have you seen any type of biases?
I think it's a combination of both. I think, like you, I'm sure you read Everybody Lies by Seth Stevens-Davidovitz, right? And I think that's the beauty of understanding the data, whether that's individual data or aggregate data, of what it's really telling us. So yes, part is, self-reporting, but part is actually seeing the behavior of everything you're eating and tracking, everything you're doing around activity, or more importantly, did you stop doing something? And do we need to give you the most personalized prompt to get you back on track? And that's the kind of behavior in anticipation of someone that's potentially going to go through a difficult time or they need more support. So I think it's important that we look at quantitative and qualitative and marry them together, both in aggregate as well as for the individual.
Great. So, again, when we think about all the data, and it's amazing, right, to think about all the different data points that you are collecting about, each individual. There is other data that's sitting in other silos. You mentioned gamification, right? Peloton's a great example of a company who's really, during this time, figured out gamification. They're a media company. They're collecting a lot of data about your exercise. There's locked in data there. There's data with companies like Fitbit and other sleep tracking devices. There's data locked up in electronic medical records and health records that only your physician has access to. Do you see a world where, a consumer could really own all of their data and someone could have insight across all of that? Do you think that data will continue to have to sit within these individual platforms? I mean, is the holy grail for you when you talk about 360 that you could have insights into, people's behavior across all of these? I mean, how do you think about, obviously, the more data sounds like the better you could serve the user?
Yes, I think integration and aggregation, right, of data is a big opportunity. So, for example, if you look at, WW, we're integrated into, Apple devices, Fitbit devices. We recently announced our collaboration with Amazon Halo, where, we're one of the health and wellness partners that is going to serve up challenges and other opportunities for those using the device. We also recently announced our partnership with Zoom as their health and wellness partner. So I do think that, in today's environment, certainly we're going to be focused on the work that we're doing, but I think that there's definitely benefits for integration across technology. And at the end of the day, it's in service of how we can help people. And in our case, develop the habits that are going to be livable and sustainable, as well as efficacious, to help them lead better, healthier lives.
Right. So, what excites you moving forward, right? So obviously, we've used the word accelerate a lot. So we've accelerated digital transformation pre-COVID to during COVID. At some point, hopefully 2021, face-to-face will come back, but obviously in service of or of digital will remain. What excites you, sort of what's on the horizon as you think about the roadmap of where do you need to take your community experience, customer experience in a digital world? What's that next level?
Everything that's been happening in the digital world has really allowed us to do what I call human flourishing. And that's really what we are as a company. And it goes back to that financial, human, and social impact that I'm excited about. So as we enter 2021 with MyWW Plus, these new verticals that we're able to launch. In addition to that, all the work we're doing with WW Good and our recently announced Healthy Living Coalition around really being a brand galvanizing not just ourselves, but others to really help in this democratization of wellness and the diversification of what it is can be provided. And I think, again, it goes back to purpose, equitable access to opportunity. All of those areas are what I'm excited about in terms of what we can bring. And that's really been the focus for us.
Great. So for, the other executives, watching this who, again, sit in entrenched industries that historically have not been thought about as technology industries, but to your point, know now they need to embrace technology and digital, no matter if it's, things like you mentioned, artificial intelligence, machine learning. What advice do you give to other executives as they think about this related to everything from, you noted some of the culture, team culture aspects, but around culture, around team, how do they think and see around these corners that as people who may not have grown up in a technology role, what's your advice for other CEOs and other business leaders who are struggling with some of these same challenges?
I would say the first and most important thing that you need to do is define your purpose. And I'm not saying that as some kind of altruistic, but what exactly are you trying to deliver to people that is going to not just resonate, but be in service of what their needs are? And it doesn't matter what business you're in, because everything has to come from that. And then once that's defined, if it does require transformation, just understand it's not a linear journey, but you need to move quickly. And, if you're a public company, certainly you need to have the support and alignment with your board. Certainly, what are you putting your investment dollars across? You said it before, incredibly important. You have to galvanize the culture around what it is that you're looking to deliver. And then you're going to have a level of resiliency to be able to get there. But speed is critical in today's environment because we're all moving that quickly. And we've seen it in industries, retail, which I came out of for so many years, those that really invested in their digital transformation earlier are the ones that were able to quickly respond to how one's needs and their consumers, had to be serviced. And I think that is of critical importance. I think the second thing is you need to lean into it. It's not a defensive mechanism. It's an offensive mechanism. And, I took my last company public in August 2008. I thought that was going to be the crisis in my career, but a lot of learnings from that. And if you look at the companies that thrived and came out of that stronger, they were the ones that continued to invest in innovation, that accelerated efforts. And not that they didn't have to make hard decisions. We all have. There's not a single one of us that haven't had to make hard decisions throughout this entire time. But we've also had to be focused on what's going to make us stronger as a company, and how are we going to actually provide an even greater service to our constituencies coming out of this.
Great. And you mentioned sort of obviously, boards and public companies. I'm assuming historically, right, making large investments in technology and digital transformation, typically they're looking at shareholder value. They're looking at, okay, how does this translate short-term, mid-term, long-term into the performance of the company and the stock? Do you think that will become easier where boards, will have to be closer and understand that this is a necessity? It's no longer a, iterative process, but it's a complete necessity that they need to be more, digitally savvy. Do you think the one thing coming out of this pandemic is boards will be more open to those types of investments?
So first, let me clarify, nothing's easy, right? But I do think it's a strategic balance, right? You certainly have to, take all your, stakeholders into consideration, but it's not mutually exclusive. Mm-hmm. And I think that's going to be very important today, that brands, again, it's why I say you have to lead with purpose, and then you have to define your business strategy over the course of time that is going to create long-term value for all of your stakeholders. That's certainly important.
Great. Yeah, and I think Larry Fink has done a great job of talking about, stakeholders over only shareholders. And I think over time we're starting to see, as I mentioned, the companies that are becoming digitally savvy are able to better serve their various constituents, be it their customers or consumers, be it their employees. Right, it's not only about the short-term value in the shareholders. So
I do think the technology enables you to be more agile, to be more nimble, to be able to learn in real time. So the investments that you're making are as strategic as they can be for where they're going to take the brand and the business.
Right. No, great. Well, Mindy, I appreciate you joining us today. This is a great conversation. I think a lot of learnings here for companies that are going through their digital transformation, that are figuring out how do they prioritize and create value and understand their purpose. So really appreciate you joining us here today.
Thank you so much for having me. As always, a great conversation.
Okay. Thanks, Mindy.